Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming tonight. Today, me, Megan, and Grace, who are from the Youth Advisory Council Committee from Reaction for Inclusion, will be talking about supporting youth advocacy. Reaction for Inclusion, if you don't know, is the Youth Advisory Council that we are on is through Community Living Ontario, and it's just aiming to have an inclusive Canada for all. Shown if you can switch to the next slide. By the end of the presentation, we are hoping that you will have these questions answered. So we'll do some introductions so you know kind of who we are and what we're doing to make a difference. Then we're going to talk about how youth are the future. Then what issues are youth advocating right now and how are youth making a difference on these issues. So we'll kind of talk about some examples that are currently going on, how adults have supported us personally in our lives, and how that has impacted both us and the adult positively, what makes a good adult ally, and we're going to make you join in and do some activities during that time, and then what you can do moving forward to help youth do better and achieve our future goals.
Hi, my name is Grace. I'm 20 years old and I live in Windsor, Ontario. I joined the YAC in 2019 after hearing about the group from my friend Nicole. I was interested in joining the group because I heard that some of the members also had a learning disability. I have a learning disability, so I thought it would be good for me to meet other people like me. I enjoy being a YAC member because I like meeting new people and I want to encourage more youth to join the YAC.
Hi everybody, my name is Megan Dendecker. I'm from Brewville, Ontario, but right now I'm in London, Ontario school. I joined the YAC in 2020 in the midst of COVID, asked to be a speaker, and I've just always joined back. And I joined the YAC to make a difference, to spread awareness and help people understand how we can make every place inclusive. I'm also in the Autism and Behavioral Sciences program at Fansville College, and I'm one of the co-chairs for this year.
Hi everyone, I'm Moira Robertson. Shout out to the one person I saw in here who's from Kincardine. I'm from Walkerton, Ontario, but I live in Peterborough and I go to school in Oshawa, and so a bit complicated about where I come from, but shout out to Kincardine. I joined the YAC in 2023. However, I had been involved with Reaction for Inclusion through friends in high school, and I thought for a while that, hey, I've aged out, like I'm no longer a youth. Um, Turns out the YAC goes up to 30, and so I still count as a youth even at 24. At that time, I was 23. And so I was so very excited that I could join and continue working with Reaction for Inclusion, because Reaction for Inclusion really inspired me in high school to do what I do today, which is working as an autistic advocate. I do a lot of speaking engagements and publications and all kinds of funky things that take up my time. And so Reaction for Inclusion really inspired me to do that. So when I found out that I could continue, I was like, yay, let's go. Because my goal is to always work towards an inclusive and accepting world for all.
In this next section, we're going to be talking the youth advisory community. If you hear us talking with the YAC, it's the same thing. It is short form for youth advisory community. So that's a thing to keep in mind. So the youth advisory community is also known as the YAC. Like I said, it's a powerful group for youth ages 13 to 29 with and without disabilities, and they lead Reaction for Inclusion movement. We are passionate leaders and change makers. We provide recommendations to inform community living in Ontario about the experience that we as youth across the province, and we ensure COO remains relevant and up to date with the issues and impact on youth of Ontario.
R4 is a youth movement. Our goal is to ensure that youth with and without disability are included in their schools and communities. This movement was created in 2008 for youth ages 13 to 29. Our goals are to empower young people to take action to make space more inclusive change the way we talk about disability, ensure communities embrace young people as leaders, reform the meaning of community to create a place where youth can grow and be heard. We want youth to know that they belong and their voices can be heard.
So some of the past examples of things that Reaction for Inclusion are what's on this slide. So community change projects. So that's the guy with his hand kind of up. These were projects started by youth groups across Ontario. These groups consisted of students who saw a lack of inclusion in their school and wanted to take action to change the status quo. The Disrupt Social Education series, which is the photo you see of somebody kind of in the classroom. The purpose of Disrupt series was to provide youth educators, allies, and self-advocates with social justice education. These workshops allowed participants to come together to share ideas and learn ways to create a more inclusive Canada. The YAC members came up with 5 topics that focused on issues they felt were important to youth then, today, but at a few years ago when that was done. These topics were mental health, inclusive education, truths of institutionalization, Indigenous arts and culture, and environmental barriers to employment. The virtual masterclass series. So this was done during the pandemic. The YAC members organized these masterclasses to ensure that all youth leaders felt empowered to adapt to change and learn strategies for wellness, resilience, and growth. The Sibling Citizens with a Cause. So this was a group of sibling advocates who wanted to support their loved ones who had a disability. As these YAC members reflected on their shared experiences, they found support with one another and recognized that there were limited resources for youth who had siblings with disabilities. As a result, they created a resource, which you can find on the website, called A Guidebook for Siblings. This resource focuses on the important role of siblings in advocating for more inclusive spaces for people with disabilities. The Leading for Inclusion Youth Speaker Series. So this was from 2021 to 2022. The YAC-led social media campaign to empower the voices of each YAC member and raise awareness about the importance of youth leadership. Each month, they share their personal stories and passionately discuss topics that matter to youth in Ontario. This can be found on our social media, which we'll get to the website and social media at the end, and you'll be able to look at all of this. And the Imagination and Motion series, which is also on social media. This project was started by the YAC as a way to do advocacy through artwork. Each month, we focused on a new theme, such as the importance of adult allies, which is the one that's shown on the slide here. And YAC members created drawings, videos, infographics, whatever they decided to do that displayed what the topics meant to them. And then what we are currently doing is the youth leadership workshops. So one of the examples that's shown on here is the Building Authentic Spaces, but there are 2 other ones. So Reaction for Inclusion's Youth Leadership Workshop Series is for youth age 14 to 29. From January to August 2025, our provincial youth leaders, so the YAC, will facilitate workshops covering topics such as youth leadership, advocacy, and allyship, and authentic inclusion. Our goal is to provide youth with social justice education and empower them to be change makers in their local communities. We're offering these virtual workshops to youth groups and students in high schools. To learn more about each topic or to book a workshop for a youth group or high school class, you can visit the website, which we will give you at the end, but it's reactionforinclusion.com. And you will be able to get it at the end so that you can look up what we are currently doing and looking for people to sign up to get the workshops. This is a subtle hint. So now we're going to get into why youth and how youth are the future.
So we're going to talk about how we bring new perspectives. For this first one, we have lived experiences. So for example, I work with people with disabilities. I myself have a disability myself, so I have little experiences with getting the right help, but now I have the right advocacy skills and being able to do that for them and being able to bring that lived experiences to them. We have a unique way of looking at the world, so we have grown up different than probably you guys in this call. If you guys are older, grandparents, parents, we have access to technology and we have access to knowledge from all over the world and all over like the country and stuff like that. So we have been able to find resources, being able to find stuff that's happening in the world, even if it's not in Canada, but we want to still spread awareness. we have less solutions to address long-standing issues. So there's long-standing issues that people in the past have not brought up or have not been able to bring up. We have now been able to do that, and we have less solutions that we have from lived experiences, like we've said. We are creative and passionate, so we are creative in ways on how to do things, and we are passionate about the things we want to do. We aren't just like, oh, we want to make a difference. We're like, we are passionate about this, and we are gonna make a difference. Youth aren't afraid to say it like it is. So youth aren't afraid to be like, yeah, we don't like this. We are just gonna say it no matter what. It might not sound the nicest, and it might not be in the nicest way, but we mean no harm in it. We just want things to go as planned, and we want things to get done. So we are not gonna sugarcoat it.
Our next point is that we understand youth. First, we can relate to the issue first by our peers, because we are youth too. We may have even struggled ourselves with these issues. We should understand the challenges with youth face with schools, finding jobs, seeking help, and making friends. Even if we come from different schools or cities, it's easy for us to relate to each other because the things we go through may be very similar, and it's easy to talk to and trust someone who deals with the same issues as you. Next, we can offer peer-to-peer support and guidance. Since we are close in age, it's easy for us to offer advice to help other youth. For example, I am really good at making friends, but my cousin is very shy. When he meets new people, because I know this is hard for him, I've tried to help him make new friends. I would point out some friends to him and ask him if they seemed nice. I would offer to go with him to talk to them so he would not be alone. This helped him a lot as he made a few new friends and he was able to start doing this on his own.
And it's really important with what Grace kind of said of that it was a youth helping a youth, because when we help peers with the issues that we have, it has a significantly bigger impact and can be less embarrassing than if an adult helped them. So for example, when I'm a supply EA or working as a camp counselor with kids with different exceptionalities, it's way less embarrassing for the kid and also way more effective for it to be a peer-to-peer support than if I went up with an EA, like as an adult, I walk up with like a kid, I'm like, hey, do you want to be this kid's friends? Everybody is like, all of the youth naturally are going to be nervous about the fact that it's an adult, probably think that kid's a little strange by the fact that they have an adult following them around and trying to make friends for them. And that's just going to hinder their ability to make friends. Whereas if it's a youth that's going forward and going, hey, this person loves to play basketball. I don't know why they're playing basketball in this scenario, but loves to play basketball. Then if a kid goes up and goes, hey, can we play basketball with these two? It's a lot more natural and it sets them up for success in the future, which we'll get into, because there's not always going to be an adult following them around, socializing with them, but there will always be peers around, no matter how old that kid is. And so that's where generally as an EA or counselor or just an adult working with kids, I tend to go up and go, hey, hey, Megan, Grace really likes basketball and you really like basketball. I don't know if they like basketball, but in this scenario they do. Don't deny that. Would you like to go play basketball? And then they can go off and play basketball because they desperately love it in this scenario. And that's a lot less of a kind of invasive way, a lot less invasive to be able to just go, hey, you two like basketball, go off and play, and go and grab more people, than if I was to go up and going, hey, so we have to play with Grace here. And on that note, back to Grace.
Third, it's easy to contact with youth in our school and local areas. It's easy to talk to youth who go to our high school or in our program because they already know us. It's also easier to talk to someone who has seen you before because you take the same class, hang out with the same people, or attend the same community group. You already have one thing in common, so you can make more connections and share your interest. That leads to the fourth point, which is we can build connections with youth based on shared interest. When you share something in common, like a hobby, it makes it easier to talk to each other. From there, we can learn more about each other. We can talk about the problems we face or the issues we see in our school or city. And sometimes it's easier to talk and talk to a trust friend or classmate. Lastly, we know what space youth are in. Since we are youth, we know where other youth tend to be. That may be a youth hub in our town or on social media. When it comes to doing youth outreach, we can help adults or staff reach youth where they are. For example, we can introduce them to the right social media platforms, or we can act as youth advisor who go into local schools to talk to youth directly and tell them about local youth programs they can join. We can also help adults be more relatable to youth. For example, we can help them make social media posts that youth want to see, and we can share it on the platforms that youth uses the most. Overall, it is a good idea to work with youth leaders like us who can help 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 you connect with other youth in your area.
So I don't know what happens when we all turn to adults where we suddenly lose the ability to care about the world or think we can change it. I don't know. Maybe it's just maybe it's this prefrontal cortex thing that everybody's talking about. But youth and teenagers especially are optimistic that the future can be better, even if they are faced with every example of how it can't be. Somehow they're still optimistic that things can be better and they want to change that. They're hopeful that things will be changed and they're motivated to do that. And so one of the things that constantly gets said to me in my world and with youth is, especially with the older group, so the younger group I don't have to radicalize as much. The older group I do, because by the time that people get to their 20s, they seem to have lost all of that teenage anger that they had before. And that anger is what drives them to change. And sometimes I'll say to people, like, hey, that wasn't right. You know that, right? Like, that's not okay that this thing happened to you. And there is something you can do to change it. And people, the older they get, the more shocked they are to hear that come out of my mouth. The older they get, the less likely they are to realize, hey, this is wrong, this can change, and the less likely they are to fight it. And the thing that I hear the most in response to that from those older, sometimes older youth, sometimes adults, is I didn't realize that I was allowed to be angry. And I don't know what happens between your teenage years and your adult years that you think it's not okay anymore and that things can't change, but something happens and the youth still have that. They still have that, hey, that is not okay, and I'm allowed to be angry about this, and I'm allowed to change it. And part of that attitude is what makes R4I so reaction for inclusion. I'm using acronyms. R4I so powerful, and why I was so glad I could continue with it is because it's a group of youth that just get it. We get how wild the world can be living with disabilities, and we just want to make a difference in the smallest ways. And that can be applied across all youth. Because, for example, one of the most powerful moments for me with Reaction for Inclusion was at the conferences that we keep saying need to come back. If anybody here has the power to bring back the Reaction for Inclusion conferences, do it. At one of the Reaction for Inclusion conferences, all of the adults had gone to bed. It was like 9 p.m. Lashona would have been long in bed at that point. And we started playing Cards Against Humanity, which is a very teenage game. And it's also not a game that you think everybody would be able to play. It requires reading. It requires understanding social cues, although actually the less social cues you have, the better in that game. But it requires a lot of things that you'd think people with disabilities wouldn't have. But we were in a space full of people who had disabilities and also wanted the world to be inclusive. And so without some long debate about, well, we can't play this game because it can't be accommodating to everybody, we paired off into groups of people who could read. We had a whole system devised where people couldn't physically hold the cards, so well, everybody's cards get to just be on the table. And we just accommodated everybody without even thinking about it and without even debating about it, because we knew that it needed to happen. And we had that just, well, why can't we mentality? Why can't we just play this game? Why can't we just all be regular teenagers, even though so many of us have such a wide array of disabilities? And that's kind of what is so powerful about youth and wanting to create change, is that no matter how many roadblocks are sitting in front of youth, they'll just take them and go. They will go, yep, we're still going. We're not going to give up on this. And they don't want to just talk about the issues. They want to break down those barriers and make a true difference, either in a small way or in a large way. But even the small ones become big eventually. Megan.
This next slide we're going to be talking about is we are setting the next generation up to success. So when you as adults not only listen to us, but actively listen to us, it not only empowers us, but it helps us take action. And it also helps the adult ally understand this, because the simple act of listening can help us become better at advocating for each other and advocating for everything that's going on. So please just listen to us. Even if it's just like we want to talk with someone that seems little, just listen to us and just let us rant and help us be able to break down those barriers. Also, we're building our advocacy skills from a young age. So when you guys are listening to us and you guys are helping us, we're not only building our advocacy skills, but we're doing it from a young age, and we're able to bring that all the way onto life. So if we can start that early and it comes natural to us, if we start it at an early age and we are listened to, and we're not just shut down by you guys not listening. We also gain the skills needed to recognize injustices and what to do. So we gain the skills of being like, hey, this is an issue, this is an injustice, or this is something that we want to change, and it help us know what to do, since we will know how to solve the problems and we'll know how to advocate for them, and not just be like, we have this issue, but we'll just teach some youth that don't know how to do that because we're just youth. And then it starts a conversation so we don't repeat the same mistake. So there has been mistakes in the past, there's been mistakes recently, but we want to start the conversation now. If we don't make the same mistakes, we want to make sure that we come up with new solutions, and we come up with new advocacy skills. We don't have that same mistakes happen, and if we have better things happen.
One of the really important things about setting up the next generation is when you help one youth, you're also helping and teaching every single person that youth interacts with afterwards. And so, for example, one of the like prime, oh yes, this is a thing that Moira would do. To anybody who knows me, this was not shocking. So I attend a university and they have free Menster products. And so I looked at them one day and discovered they were expired. And that expired scented ones, it's kind of gross. That's not good for you if nobody knows that. Expired scented products, please don't use them. I went to the student union. I went, hey, by the way, these are expired. My student union then changed the expiry dates for some reason. However, way back in high school, I had the privilege of having a lovely group of adults around me that supported my advocacy skills and helped me learn these things. And so I had learned way back in high school when I had decided that, hey, menstrual products should be freely accessible to everybody. And I started a program in my school and then to my school board. And eventually, after I went off to college, it wound up Ontario-wide, thanks to some lovely young women. But because I had learned how to do that in high school and I'd learned how to contact people to be able to supply menstrual products, I still had those contacts to be able to reach out and go, hey. And because I had learned how to set up these projects in the first place and how to do all of the email all the companies, all of these things, when my student union did this, having that knowledge from starting the project in high school, I was able to contact the people who originally donated the products and go, hey, can I have some menstrual products, please? Of which point, because this person, newbie, sent to my university like 50 boxes of menstrual products labeled Moira's mission and nothing else. And so when I showed up to the post spot at my university and I went, hey, I'm Moira, he went, yep, you have a lot of boxes here. And so I wheeled them into my student union. And when somebody shows up with literally a wagon full of menstrual products, you tend to ask some questions of how you acquired those. And so I was able to teach my student union at my university how to effectively acquire products that were not expired and how to safely distribute them so they don't run out. And all of these things, because I had had adults help me way back when I was a teenager, I was able to share this knowledge years and years later in kind of a funny way, years and years later, which meant that they were able to learn and they'll probably teach the next people that come along. And then everybody just gets menstrual products, which we should have anyways, but that's a whole other presentation. But because I knew how to solve it and I knew how to do this because I had learned and I had adults support me, I was able to then teach the next set of people. And it will just create a ripple effect from there. And so you're setting up not just us, but everybody else after us. Which is where we'll go into the next one.
The next section we are going to be talking about is why youth and why the youth right now.
The R for I movement was created in 2008. It was created for youth who wanted to change the way we think and talk about disabilities. The youth noticed many issues they wanted to fix. First, there was a lack of education. They realized that many people in their schools and communities had held negative ideas about disability. Second, there was a lack of space that included everyone. Many of the youth realized that school events, sports teams, and clubs were not open to everyone. Often students with disabilities were left out and kept apart from the rest of the school. Third, there was a lack of youth voices in the disability movement, with youth with disabilities wanted to talk about their experience, but did not know where to start. They did not know who to talk to, how to share their stories, and how to teach others to think and act in a better way. The All I movement wanted to make a change. With youth were taught how to become leaders and how to speak up. They were shown how to use their voices and stories to teach their peers, how to include everyone. They worked with adults who helped them create change projects, workshops, and social media posts. That helped to reform the way people talked about disability. They created safe space where youth could talk about the issues they saw in their schools and learn from each other. They wrote reports, spoke to government leaders, and led workshops across Ontario. Today, our YAC continues to raise up with youth leaders who use their stories to create positive change.
This group called Home and Brew for our youth leaders, they saw a lack of sexual health educations for youth with disabilities. They came up with a solution. The youth leaders created a resource hub specifically targeted at youth with disabilities. This resource was created by youth with disabilities and it talked about what sexuality looks like to them while providing resources and for youth to learn more.
So another youth group that we'd like to highlight, because obviously Reaction for Inclusion is not the only one. So this is the Ontario Student Trustees Association. So I kind of mentioned this before with the menstrual products. So these other youth groups all do lots of other things. And so we're just kind of highlighting one of the issues and how they kind of created a solution for it. So the issue that ACO realized was the lack of access to free menstrual products in Ontario public schools, which was then leading to attendance issues and personal hygiene concerns. And so the youth created a pilot project in local schools and then school board wide with donations from the manufacturers. And this was across lots of local schools and lots of school boards. And then ACO petitioned the Ontario government to provide access to free menstrual products in all Ontario schools. This eventually led to a partnership with Shoppers Drug Mart. And then it went away because of COVID, but it was there for a little bit. And so this was, as the other examples, is there was an issue that was identified as being specific to youth. Youth then created a solution that met their needs as youth and were able to push for positive change.
This next section that we're going to be talking about is adult allies. We've been talking about adult allies, but if you want to know why adult allies are important, we're going to be talking about our adult allies specifically.
So the person that I would like to talk about is my high school English teacher. She taught more than English. She no longer teaches English, but my high school teacher, as well as some other teachers at my high school. So they very much supported me and never told me that things weren't possible. I came in with wild ideas like, hey, let's run a massive event supporting wellness that's going to run like all week. Let's do a whole huge carnival so everybody's included. Let's get menstrual products at every single school. Hey, I want to go and be on the special education advisory committee at my school board. They never went, hey, that's a little bit ridiculous, calm down. They supported me and they cheered me on, and they still do that to this day. And that's the really important part. I was doing all of this stuff in high school, which then meant that maybe my classwork was not getting done as much as it could, which meant that they just adjusted my classwork to fit. So when I was in a ComTech class, So I'm making like posters and videos. Then I made posters and videos that was related to the youth advocacy I was doing. And the important thing is they never judge me or let me chatter on about my goals. I'm absolutely positive that they did not want to stay after school every single day and listen to me natter on about all of these different things. They absolutely wanted to go home to their own children, but they didn't. They stayed and they never judged me, even when I came back from these school board meetings with other youth advocates, because being a youth with a disability, especially in the youth advocacy world, is not always a positive experience. And so I'd come back upset from some of these meetings sometimes, and they would just let me complain about every student that I had run into. And they never judged me, even if I was being a little bit silly and goofy, to put it lightly. And just let me be me and let me have these big dreams and big goals and kind of just let me talk it out for hours on end sometimes. And the thing is, they also share bits of themselves with me. So this teacher, like, I give her cookies every year at Christmas. And so this Christmas, I just literally, for some reason, stood in her doorway. I think we just never made it any further in. Stood in the doorway and chatted for ages about, on Christmas Eve, about just my life and her life and what was going on. And then her kids came home and they're like, oh, Moira's here again. And that was true in high school too. I was able to talk about things like Criminal Minds with this Boosh. Her name is Boosh. I was able to talk about things like Criminal Minds that we had in common because we both very much loved it at the time. I was able to talk about, like, hey, like, this is what's going on in my life, and she'd share what appropriately what was going on in her life and things like that, where it wasn't just a one-sided relationship. It was a two-sided relationship in an appropriate adult and youth way. And it still is that way, because even though I'm 24 now and I am not the little 15-year-old, she still shows up to my things when she can. And if she can't, she wants all of the updates. She still gets Christmas cookies every year, and makes sure to give me back the cookie tin, because otherwise she doesn't get cookies. And still sends me recipes at weird hours of the night sometimes, or restaurant recommendations, even though I am no longer her student and a little tiny youth. We've still, because we built that connection is still going, and it never disappeared, which means that when I encounter that, I'll still share that same type of care. And in fact, I have told her multiple times that the way that I work with children is the way that she interacted with me. Grace, you're up.
My mom. My adult ally is my mom. When it was time for me to apply to college, we began looking into schools that had the CICE program and an ECE program. St. Clair College in Windsor had a CICE, but I wanted to go away for school. My parents wanted me to have the experience of living on my own and living in a dorm, but it didn't make sense to live in a dorm at St. Clair, where my home was a few minutes away. So I wanted to go to a college outside of my city so I could have the experience of being on my own. Since my mom knew this and that I wanted to study ECE, she helped me search for programs at different schools. While she was looking, she found a program at Banshaw. I was happy but also nervous that I wouldn't get in because the program only accepts 15 people each year. I also wanted to do an interview to get into the program. it can be hard talking about yourself. So I knew I would need help to prepare. My mom helped me prepare for the interview by asking me questions they might ask me. Because of her help, I felt more confident going into the interview, and I was accepted into my program. When I started my first year in a CICE, my mom continued to support me. Whenever I had questions, she would help me out. For example, when I was moving out from my dorm, I had to sign forms. I was having issues with some of the questions, so I FaceTimed my mom, and she walked me through it. If I couldn't figure it out, she would write it out for me to figure out what to say. After I finished my program at Fairchild, I want to do the full ECE program at St. Clair College. Even now, my mom is helping me plan for my future. She is helping me look into programs and plans to get advice from my teachers. My mom has always been a great ally. She is patient, loving, caring, and helpful. She has helped me overcome many challenges and continues to support me so I can reach my goals.
My ally is Miss Gay. From anyone that's from my area, I went to Wingham High School. She was my high school grade 10 math teacher, but before she was my math teacher, she was the inclusion club teacher that ran it. It was called something else, but basically it's a club that basically is the same idea as this, but in a very smaller way. Helped me realize what I wanted to do for work. Instead, I wanted to be an EC when I was in college, in high school. Boy, was I wrong. I am now a DSW, general mental service worker, so I will be working with kids, both kids with disabilities. She brought me to Reaction for Inclusion conferences that we need to bring back. This happened before COVID, which helped me realize that I wanted to be a DSW because I was truly authentic with these people, and helped me advocate to get the courses I needed to go into my program because I got told in high school I would never go off to college and I would never be able to get the courses I needed because of my disability, and she helped me be able to come to the place I am now. We are now at our interactive activity. So now that we ask a question to you guys, based on our stories, what are the characteristics do you think makes a good ally? This is going to be an interactive activity, so we want everyone to form groups of 3. We will put you guys into breakout rooms because this is online, and it will be 3 to 4 minutes to write down the ideas of these characteristics. Make sure one person takes notes for your group. You can send your responses in the chat, and we'll close the rooms where you can go over your responses.
If anybody wants to share in the chat what their group talked about, and then I can read it aloud, unless anybody is really desperately wanting to get on their mic and say what they talked about. Anyone at all desperately want to unmute? Oh, Brandy, do you want to unmute?
Sure. We talked about some important characteristics of someone being an adult ally, being someone who has had education around the importance of inclusion and has taken that initiative to find the education and learn more about it. That the person would have to, maybe have good advocacy skills themselves, a good cheerleader, be a good listener. Yeah, and we talked about other things about, what I was in with Megan, and she talked about some of the things that she had wished she had in high school and public school, and how she felt just that some of her disabilities she automatically had been labeled, but if she had someone recognize that early, that just because she may have spoke differently than others, that she was still able to learn the same as others. I think that's what she was trying to say. She didn't quite get to finish everything, but I think that's what she was trying to say.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah, I think that's a lovely sentiment and absolutely true that especially when working with youth with disabilities, that initiative to want to learn about disabilities is very, very important, and learn about ways to include. And also, yeah, absolutely, that advocacy desire is maybe not the right word, but like the want to advocate themselves as well. And as like somebody in the chat has said, shared value is very important. Someone who can help inspire you and someone who can listen and support your goals. Lisa said that we talked about someone who can listen, is not judgmental, is caring and enthusiastic, and does not take over for the youth, but supports them in their advocacy goals. I love that one. It's absolutely true that like adult advocates supporting youth advocates absolutely need to have the youth take the forefront, as that's the very important part about youth advocacy. Whitney shares that their group talked about someone who listens. Listening is a big thing that has come up as well. Someone who shares your values, but is also willing to provide a different perspective. That's also very important, especially kind of the like mentor perspective of the, you know, you've seen a few things, you know a bit more, and so you're able to teach a little bit more. Someone who is willing to spend the extra time needed to support you, absolutely, and that's kind of what it sounds like Grace was touching on in their group about taking the time to learn and to learn about people's needs and to learn about inclusion. Someone who takes guidance from youth as opposed to taking the lead, passenger on the ship versus captain of the ship, absolutely. And that's kind of similar to what Lisa's group was saying of having not taking over from the youth of what their advocacy, what they think they want for their advocacy, and letting the youth do what they want instead, and not instead of what the adult wants. Good ally listens. There's listens again without judgment, encouraging youth to follow their dreams, and celebrates wins. Celebrate wins is absolutely important, especially the little wins. And that could be unique for each youth, obviously, of the tiny little wins are also just as important to celebrate. Yes, always listening. Someone who will help build capacity in the youth and want to create a movement, teach, guide, and support from the sidelines and let the youth shine. Absolutely. That kind of teacher, mentor aspect of sharing the knowledge that you have, that you've maybe learned through different education opportunities that you have, and sharing that with the youth. Absolutely. Understanding the youth are leaders. We're so glad to meet each other. Met at King City Conference. Adult Ally is someone who believes in you, is supportive, and a guide. A good cheerleader, good listener, non-judgmental, helps build advocacy skills, helps create opportunities to be heard. Someone who can build capacity of youth, provide them with opportunities. Provide them with opportunities is very important as well, because, you know, youth they don't just have people emailing them all the time about various different opportunities, and so being able to share those and seeking them out as well. Yeah, always taking the lead. Patient listeners. Use our shared experiences to relate and understand, but avoid pushing our own solutions, and rather guide youth to use their unique lens and skills and voice to lead in overcoming the boundaries and witnesses they experience. And yes, well, I'm sure Megan can speak about that one herself, but like Megan, I'm sure will, but that sometimes adults pushing us to do these things means that we'll do stuff that we never would have done without them, because we maybe didn't have the skills, the confidence, just the person behind us cheering us on, which is kind of what some other people are talking about, of being good cheerleaders. My group was talking about how there needs to be an overall goal in mind that's reflective of the youth's personal goals, and being attentive, patient, understanding, and that listening aspect is really important. And also the thing that kind of is overarching in all of this that everybody's kind of shared is just the ability to care about the youth that you're working with. Just caring about them as people, caring about what they care about, caring about learning, caring about all of that. That's the really big overarching one that I'm kind of hearing from this. Grace or Megan can jump in if there's anything else they would like to mention, but anything.
I think you basically like did everything. Like, yeah, with my point, like I didn't know that DSW was a thing until my teacher was like, "Hey, have you thought of this?" And I was like, "I don't know what that is." So like it's not harmful to be like, "Hey, have you thought of doing this instead?" We're just doing it in a nicer way, being like, "Hey, I think this might suit you better," kind of thing. But I think you guys touched on everything. You guys did such a great job with this.
Alrighty. Lashona, we are ready to move on.
Grace?
Grace, it's your turn.
What can you do to end our presentation? We would like to share 6 things that you can do to help youth reach the goals.
So to start off, the thing that we all collectively hate doing, and SOTA youth can confirm, is filling out forms and emails and paperwork. This is kind of going back to that mentorship thing of eventually as an adult, you get the fun, lovely job of writing all of those emails and filling out all those forms to the point that whether you want to do it or not, you can do it effectively. Whereas youth, when they're just starting out, advocacy requires way more paperwork and emails than I personally think it should. And when we're first starting out in this, we don't know how to do that. We don't know how you sign off emails, how you format emails. We don't know what to fill in on forms, paperwork, especially for wanting to get money or funding for some project that we're doing. No idea how to fill it out because we've never done it before. But chances are, as an adult, you have had to send a few emails or if you fill out a few forms. And so share that and help us do that because nobody wants to do it at all.
The next thing you can help us with is scheduling. Anybody that's youth or even adults are kind of bad at scheduling sometimes because they don't know what's important and what is just like, oh, that could wait. To help plan and prioritize the tasks. So if they have like a deadline coming up, for example, college applications, and they want to help with this, make sure they get that college application in. Find what they need to do to be able to do it. So if they have to send emails, if they have to get like a bunch of supplies, materials, help them like do this first, do this first, do this first, and plan what they need to get done before doing other tasks. So if they have to do one thing first, make sure they do that, but they're not just gonna be overwhelmed and stressed about having too many things. And help figure out what is more urgent than other tasks. Like I said, those more urgent tasks like applications, exams, studying, make sure those get done usually first before going into anything that is extracurricular. And then help us with time management, which can also just be little reminders. Hey, this is coming up. This is coming up. Don't forget this and stuff like that.
Before you start working with youth, you should get to know them. They want to know they can trust you. One way to build trust is by learning about them. Talk to each other. No, talk to each youth to learn about what they like to do and what they care about. Ask them about school, friends, and hobbies. And remember, as they share, you should share too. They should get to know you as well. So open up and willing to talk about the things you like and care about. This will help you find common ground to build trust. And maybe you'll find that you like the same things. Also, find out what skills they have. Are they good at art, sports, public speaking, or using TikTok? Once you find out, give them a chance to use their skills more often so they become more confident by taking an interest in them and helping them gain new skills. They can become better leaders.
And also networking. And as adults, and especially as professionals, which a lot of people are on this call, you have your own networks that you've created over your life. And using that network can help you get jobs, it can help you learn new skills, it can help you wind up at random workshops on Zoom that are like that you get emails about. And so giving those opportunities for youth to do that as well, bringing them to the random workshops that you got emails about and signed up for, giving them opportunities to meet other youth who are passionate about advocacy, giving them opportunities to learn from other adults that you may know. Things like when we first presented this, it was at the community living conference, of which Lashona helped us fill out the form, like make the whole PowerPoint for like an entire 2 months straight, like once a week. She had to sit there while we write this PowerPoint and had to help us do it, and then hauled us around the conference and introduced us to all kinds of people because we didn't know anybody there, and helped us learn and navigate that. And it was very, very helpful. Thank you, Lashona. Shout out to you. But giving those opportunities to network and to be able to introduce to other adults and other youth and finding opportunities where they can do those, absolutely, like one of the most helpful things you can do. Because even if you can't always be there to help them do all of these other things, giving them the network to be able to do that will set them up for success.
This next one is listen to us, listen to our complaints, and provide subtle hints and guidance so we can solve the issues ourselves. So if we're complaining about something or if we're bringing up an issue, don't tell us what to do, but give us subtle hints like, oh, you should do something with this. Oh, I know someone like this. Do you want to hear from them? But don't do it for us because we want to be the ones that are in charge. Don't say, no, you can't do that. In most cases, it won't go well. It will make the youth feel like they can't do it, but sometimes youth will retaliate and just fight it no matter what. But do not tell us that we cannot do something because it will not go well either way. And then never take over and simply support. So you can be a support and help us, but don't take over completely. But you can be a support and like help us with the emails, help us with the like conferences, help us with the PowerPoints. But don't do it all for us because we will not learn how to do it if you take over. And then let us lead and think for ourselves. So let us come up with our own ideas and let us be able to lead that ourselves.
Our last tip to support us, you can support us by cheering us on. When we start a new project, make sure we know you are proud of us. Showing up, come to our events, hear us speak, or watch us at a sports game. Showing up tells us that you care about us and what we are doing. Ask us questions. We may not always know what we need, or might not know when to ask for help. So don't be afraid to ask questions. Reach out and offer help. We may not come to you first, so it helps if you take the first step. Nothing is too hard or too much work with your help. Question time. Thank you all so much for listening to our presentation. We hope you learned a lot from us. Now we will open the floor for questions from you guys.
If anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, raise your hand.
And no question is a dumb question. So if it's even a question you think might be silly, ask it anyways. Somebody else is probably wondering that question.
We'll sit here awkwardly until at least one person asks a question. Pale, you're laughing at us. I feel like you might have a question.
Pale, what are your questions for us?
Can just think I'm actually making my daughter sit here and also listen to everything. So she's very excited and she's glad. So just just a curious question, knowing that you are very active members of our YAC committee. I'm just wondering that based on your presentation today, where can adult allies reach out in their communities with support from you, or look out for those opportunities where they can collaborate and bring youth together at regional level based on something that our committee is doing at provincial level? Any thoughts on that?
I think it kind of entirely depends on what type of advocacy, where you are going to find groups. And so with things like disability advocacy, obviously we got community living, let's go everybody, and we've got reaction for inclusion, and but if it's something else, if it's something around school, like in that type of advocacy, which is also a really popular one, if it's something around sports teams, like if whatever it is, just look in those spaces. And I know that sounds really weird, but like if it's something like school, then look at things like student council, or if there has to be a student trustee in every school board. If it's something like advocating for youth sports, going to those youth sports and events that are run by it, things like that. If it's something of advocating for, hey, this hospital needs money, okay, great, let's go to the director of the hospital and see what they could benefit from. There will be youth advisory councils all over the place. Literally type in like, hey, you know, I'm in Peterborough right now, Kawartha Region Youth Advisory Council, and see what kind of shows up. And there might be youth leadership opportunities. Rotary does youth leadership opportunities frequently. And yeah, reaction for inclusion, which we'll get the information for. Brandy asked what needs to happen to restart the conferences. Payal, that is you. Yes, the thing with we do keep making jokes about the conferences. They're kind of hard to run in the post-pandemic world, and also trying to get back the youth movement in relation to reaction for inclusion. However, what needs to happen, Payal, you need to happen. How many members do you have in the YAC? So Megan answered that. There is 22 YAC members that meet bi-weekly, and we meet on Zoom bi-weekly on Tuesdays 7 to 8. Thank you, Gwen, for the lovely comment. Whitney, I haven't thought of a question yet. Thank you, Whitney, for the lovely comment as well. Lashona is also trying to bring the conferences back. And yeah, if anybody has any other questions or comments, feel free to stick around as we're kind of ending. And then if Lashona wants to put up the contact information, the contact information slide is already up, never mind. So if you'd like to stay in touch with us, we have our emails there as well. Mine, Grace's, and Megan's. Or you can reach out to Lashona, who is our youth and community engagement coordinator, to learn more about Reaction for Inclusion and how you can support or donate to the movement. There is also a lovely QR code, which I'm assuming Lashona updated, which will take you to the Reaction for Inclusion website. Or you can follow us on R for Inclusion on Instagram to see all of the things that we get up to. And if you'd like to learn more about our current initiatives, including the youth workshop, leader workshops, which you should sign up for your various different organizations that people are coming from, absolutely find a time that works and we will be there. You can find more information about that on our website. And yeah, I think, there's also a feedback survey that Lashona is putting in there. Victoria, how can interested youth join? Lashona is the person to reach out for that. Her email is there on the contact slide, and I believe at some point in the near future there will be the application for the 2025/2026. Yeah, Lashona is nodding her head. Yes, so
That opens
sometime in the
in
near
July.
future,
Yeah.
the application will be up for the next year's Youth Advisory Council. Which the date and time of the meetings will change based on who's there going into September. And Whitney, I really am like advocating for these conferences to come back.
Like,
Whitney's on my side too.
protest.
Protest.
Your community living in protest.
How can community organizations help bring back these conferences? We need people to have the conferences. If you have people come with money. Money helps book spaces for the conferences. And also youth to join.
There we go.
That is
We'll also
that is
bring you.
how Luciana's just posting more things. Email community living and fight for the conference. For context, for anybody who doesn't know, these conferences were a place where all of us youth who were very passionate about inclusion could come together. And it was a space where disabled and non-disabled youth who are passionate about inclusion were just allowed to exist and learn about it and then take it back to our communities. But it was a really unique space because it was so inclusive that we really didn't get in our high schools. And so it was able to change our perspective on what inclusion could look like. And that's kind of learning that from a young age and learning it was possible is kind of what's pushed us forward into this. That is why we keep all advocating for these conferences, because they were very life-changing.
It's when I learned that I wanted to go into DSW instead of being at a conference.
Yeah. However, they require money because it does involve booking out spaces and a whole lot of organizing and a whole lot of time. And so that's when there's not a lot of people, there's not a lot of money, and so we don't get our lovely conferences. Payal is laughing about this.
Sad.
Yeah.
No, but I agree with you, Moira, because we can arrange for funds, and we have been kind of reaching out for certain funds with writing applications and everything. But I think we need more youth so that it's worth us for kind of, have a gathering and bring in speakers and ensure that everybody has some great takeaways, like a session like this today, right? So we would like to have that impact with a full house full kind of environment, and not something where people are just, a few of them just show up. So yeah, we are looking into that.
Sign up for our workshops, get us YAC members in to talk to your youth so we can encourage them. And then maybe in a few years, we will have enough youth all together to bring that back. Any other questions, comments? Thank you, Brandy. Okay. Well, thank you everybody for your time. Please stay in touch. If you have any pressing questions as you're heading out the metaphorical Zoom door, feel free to ask them and we will answer them. But thank you for your time. You are free to go and enjoy your evening.